Every year, millions die from preventable causes, and the economy celebrates. 8 million people die from tobacco each year, 3 million more from alcohol. Yet the companies that produce these substances are among the most profitable ones. Philip Morris made $31 billion in 2023. InBev, owner of Budweiser, made $57 billion. Meanwhile, cancer hospitals work around the clock treating lung cancers that could have been prevented. We profit from death and call it development. If this kind of reflection matters to you, subscribe. This channel doesn't offer comfort, it offers clarity. And clarity sometimes disturbs. But here's what's truly disturbing. We've built an entire economic system that depends on human suffering to function, not as a side effect, but as a core feature. Every cigarette sold represents a future medical bill. Every bottle of alcohol consumed feeds to industry simultaneously, the one that creates the problem and the one that treats it. This isn't capitalism gone wrong. This is capitalism working exactly as designed. The question isn't whether you have the right to destroy yourself. The question is, who profits when you do? Let's talk numbers, because numbers don't lie, even when the system does. Philip Morris has a profit margin of 26%. That means for every cigarette sold, a quarter of the price goes directly into the company's pocket. But here's the most brutal paradox: when a pandemic happens, when a war breaks out, when an economic crisis devastates entire families, alcohol and tobacco consumption skyrockets. During the pandemic, alcohol sales increased 54% in the first months, cigarettes 13%. Several countries' GDP got a boost exactly when more people were suffering than ever before. The system grows by feeding on the collapse of individuals. Trauma becomes economic fuel. When you're depressed, you consume more. When you consume more, the economy improves. When the economy improves, we call it progress. But let's dig deeper into this perverse logic. During the 2008 financial crisis, while millions lost their homes, alcohol consumption in the United States increased by 22%. Antidepressant prescriptions rose by 41%. Casino revenues, surprisingly, remained stable. People were literally gambling away their last dollars while losing everything else. This isn't accidental. Economic textbooks have a term for this: inferior goods, products that people buy more of when they're doing worse financially. Fast food, cheap alcohol, cigarettes, lottery tickets. The worse people feel, the more they consume these products. The more they consume, the more the GDP grows. We've created a system where human misery is directly converted into economic prosperity. And we measure this prosperity as success. Consider this: if everyone suddenly became healthy, stopped drinking, stopped smoking, stopped taking antidepressants, stopped gambling, our economy would collapse overnight. Entire sectors would disappear. Stock markets would crash. This isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. We've built an economy that requires human suffering to survive. GDP, gross domestic product, is the metric we use to measure a country's success. It counts everything, every transaction, every sale, every service. A car sold, GDP goes up. A hospital built, GDP goes up. A funeral held, GDP goes up. A chemotherapy session, GDP goes up. GDP doesn't care if a dollar came from a hospital, a coffin, or a funeral home. It just counts it. Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel Prize winner in economics, warned us: what we measure affects what we do. If we only measure growth, we ignore destruction. Kate Raworth proposed a regenerative economy, one that grows within safe limits. But that would require admitting that not all growth is good. And here's the problem: an economy addicted to growth cannot distinguish between construction and destruction. Let me give you a concrete example. When the Exxon Valdez oil spill happened in 1989, it added billions to the US GDP. The cleanup efforts, the lawsuits, the equipment purchases, the overtime payments, all of it counted as economic growth. Environmental destruction became economic opportunity. Hurricane Katrina, GDP boost. The 2011 earthquake in Japan, GDP boost. September 11th, one of the largest GDP boosts in American history. Due to reconstruction efforts, we've created a system where disasters are profitable, where destruction creates opportunity, where human suffering translates directly into economic growth. The more catastrophic the event, the bigger the economic stimulus. This isn't just about natural disasters. Consider divorce. When a couple separates, they need 2 houses instead of 1, 2 sets of furniture, 2 cars, lawyers, therapists, accountants. Divorce is economically stimulating. Family breakdown creates market opportunities. The The same logic applies to crime. Every robbery creates demand for security systems, insurance claims, police equipment, prison construction, legal services. We've built an economy that thrives on social breakdown. Now let's get to what really matters. Why do people buy things that kill them? Dopamine, the pleasure neurotransmitter. Every time you smoke, drink, buy something you don't need, dopamine is released. Your brain learns, this is good. Do it again. Companies have known this for decades. Marlboro doesn't sell cigarettes. It sells the image of the independent cowboy. Budweiser doesn't sell beer. It sells moments of connection. They're hacking your reward system. Literally, leaked documents from tobacco companies revealed they knew about addiction since the 1950s, but they continued investing in research to make cigarettes more addictive. Internal memos from Philip Morris used phrases like nicotine delivery device and satisfaction optimization. They weren't making cigarettes. They were engineering addiction delivery systems. Freedom becomes the justification for dependence. As long as it sells, choice is the favorite word of those who profit from your dependence. But the manipulation goes deeper than nicotine. Color psychology and packaging, strategic product placement, engineered flavors that trigger specific neural responses. Casinos remove clocks and windows to create temporal disorientation. Social media platforms use variable reward schedules, the same psychological principle that makes gambling addictive. Dating apps, shopping apps, news apps, all designed to create what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. You never know when you'll get that hit of dopamine, so you keep coming back. The food industry has perfected what they call the bliss point, the exact combination of sugar, salt, and fat that triggers maximum pleasure response in the brain. They hire neuroscientists to design products that are literally impossible to resist. Processed foods are engineered to override your natural satiety signals. You're not weak for eating that entire bag of chips. You're responding exactly as your brain was designed to respond to a product that was designed to hijack your brain. I have the right to drink. I have the right to smoke. I have the right to buy whatever I want. This phrase is repeated millions of times every day, and it's not wrong, but it's incomplete. You have the right to choose between 47 different types of soda, but you don't have the right to know that all of them were formulated to create dependence. Conscious consumption became a popular expression. But how can you be conscious within a system designed to keep you unconscious? Do you choose to open Instagram? Or was Instagram programmed to make you come back? The illusion of choice is the system's most powerful tool, because if you chose, the blame is yours, not the system's. This is perhaps the most insidious aspect of our economic system. It privatizes responsibility while socializing profit. When you get lung cancer from smoking, that's your personal responsibility. When Philip Morris makes billions from your addiction, that's just good business. We've been sold a myth of individual agency that ignores systemic manipulation. Personal responsibility becomes a shield that protects corporate irresponsibility. The tobacco industry spent decades funding research to create doubt about the link between smoking and cancer. The oil industry spent decades funding climate denial. The food industry spends billions promoting the idea that obesity is about personal choices, not about engineered products designed to create overconsumption. This narrative of individual choice serves a crucial function. It prevents us from examining the system itself. Instead of asking why we live in a society where the most profitable businesses are often the most harmful, we ask why individuals make bad choices. Instead of questioning why healthy food is expensive and unhealthy food is cheap, we blame people for their diet choices. Instead of examining why mental health services are inadequate while antidepressants are heavily marketed, we focus on individual resilience. This system has successfully convinced us that systemic problems are personal failures. This is not accidental. It's a deliberate strategy to maintain the status quo while shifting blame to those who suffer from it. Some countries literally depend on destruction to function. The United Kingdom collects £12 billion annually in taxes on cigarettes. It spends $1 billion treating tobacco-related diseases. In the NHS, net profit, $10 billion. The more people get sick, the more the state collects. France, $3 billion in taxes on alcohol. Spends $7 billion treating alcoholism. But here's the paradox: if everyone stopped drinking, state revenue would plummet. Some countries legalized marijuana not for health reasons, but because they discovered it's more profitable to tax addiction than to fight it. Legalization of addiction to finance health. This isn't public policy, it's systemic blackmail. But the dependence goes deeper than tax revenue. Entire economies are built around industries that profit from human suffering. Consider Nevada, where gambling generates 40% of state revenue. If people stopped gambling, the state would face financial collapse. Las Vegas wasn't built on winners. It was built on losers. The entire city is a monument to mathematically guaranteed suffering. And it's not just gambling states. States that produce tobacco depend on people in other states getting addicted. States that produce alcohol depend on people everywhere developing dependencies. The global arms trade generates $400 billion annually. Countries like the United States, Russia, France, and Germany depend on conflicts around the world to maintain their defense industries. Peace, ironically, is economically disruptive for these nations. The prison industrial complex in the United States generates $80 billion annually. Rehabilitation would be economically devastating for thousands of companies that profit from incarceration. We've created a world where suffering is systematically profitable, where healing is economically disruptive, where peace threatens prosperity. Countries that try to break this cycle face international economic pressure. When Portugal decriminalized drugs and focused on treatment instead of punishment, it was criticized by other nations whose economies depend on the drug war. When an economy needs people to suffer in order to grow, the real sickness isn't addiction. It's the system. Think about it. What kind of civilization builds its success on slow suicide? We created a machine that transforms pain into profit, suffering into growth, death into development. And the most perverse part, we call it progress. You're living inside a system that profits from your self-destructs, and that convinces you this is freedom. If this doesn't disturb you, perhaps you've already been completely captured by it. But let's go deeper. This isn't just about individual products or companies. This is about the fundamental logic of our economic system. Capitalism, as currently structured, requires infinite growth on a finite planet. But infinite growth is impossible without infinite consumption, and infinite consumption is impossible without creating infinite desires, infinite dissatisfaction, infinite need. The system doesn't just profit from your suffering, it requires your suffering to function. Your dissatisfaction is not a bug, it's a feature. Consider the absurdity. We live in the wealthiest period in human history, yet anxiety and depression rates are at historic highs. We have access to more information than ever, yet feel more confused. We're more connected than ever, yet more lonely. We have more choices than ever, yet feel more trapped. This isn't coincidence. This is the logical result of a system designed to create perpetual dissatisfaction. The system needs you to always want more, always feel inadequate, always need the next product, the next experience, the next fix. Contentment is economically disruptive. Satisfaction is bad for business. Happiness that doesn't require consumption is a threat to the entire economic model. We've built a civilization that treats symptoms while perpetuating causes, that creates problems while selling solutions, that profits from dysfunction while claiming to promote well-being. We've created a system so perverse that healing becomes economically threatening, that peace becomes financially disruptive, that contentment becomes socially subversive. But there are ways out, real, practical. First, changing metrics. Baton measures gross national happiness instead of GDP. New Zealand created a well-being budget. These aren't just feel-good measures, they're attempts to restructure the economic incentives that drive policy decisions. When you measure well-being instead of just growth, you create different incentives. Second, policies that restrict sectors that exploit vulnerabilities. Australia reduced smoking by 70% with plain packaging and high taxes. Portugal reduced drug addiction by 95% by treating it as a health issue rather than a criminal one. These policies work because they change the economic incentives. They make exploitation less profitable and healing more economically viable. Third, individual reflection. Rethinking consumption, pleasure, routine. Being free isn't just choosing, it's knowing when you're being manipulated every time you buy something, you vote, every time you consume something. You're financing the kind of world you want to live in. The question isn't, can I do this? The question is, why do I want to do this? But individual change, while important, isn't enough. We need systemic change. We need to restructure the fundamental incentives that drive our economy. We need to make well-being more profitable than suffering. Make healing more economically viable than exploitation. Make sustainability more attractive than destruction. This means rethinking everything. How we measure success, how we structure businesses, how we design products, how we organize society. It means recognizing that an economy that depends on human suffering is not just morally wrong, it's ultimately unsustainable. You can't build lasting prosperity on systematic destruction. The good news is that this is possible. Throughout history, economic systems have changed. Slavery was once considered economically necessary. Child labor was once considered economically inevitable. We've changed these systems before. We can change them again. The system profits from your pain. What will you do with that awareness? This isn't about guilt. It's about lucidity. You can continue living as before, now knowing that you're feeding a machine that feeds on suffering, or you can start making different choices, small, daily, conscious. Share this video if it made you uncomfortable in the right way. If it made you question things you didn't question before. And subscribe, because clarity is a process, not a destination. The system profits from your pain. What will you do with that awareness? But remember, awareness without action is just sophisticated entertainment. The system is counting on you to watch this video, feel disturbed for a moment, then continue living exactly as before. That's how the system perpetuates itself, by allowing dissent that doesn't threaten its functioning. Real change requires more than awareness. It requires action. It requires choosing differently, consuming differently, living differently. It requires supporting businesses that prioritize well-being over profit, politicians who prioritize people over corporations, systems that prioritize healing over exploitation. The system will continue profiting from pain until we collectively decide to stop feeding it. The question isn't whether you understand the system. The question is whether you'll do anything about it. The system profits from your pain. What will you do with that awareness?